Welcome to.
Now,
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our bi-weekly meeting of CEFACT Global Trust Registry Project, 5th of March 2026, 9 a.m. Madrid time. Before we start, just a quick note that today's meeting will be recording, including transcripts and the chat. And as usual, the recording and the minutes will be made publicly available after the meeting. If anyone has any concerns about that, please feel free to raise them now. Also, if you would like your presence to be recorded, please feel free to add a short hello in the chat. Today, I will be hosting the meeting and I will guide us through the agenda. And regarding the code of conduct and IPR, before moving forward, just a quick reminder that our work takes place under the UN CEFACT Code of Conduct and IPR policy, which encourages open collaboration, global participation, and the use of open standards. If anyone would like to add anything on this point, please feel free. Regarding our, just a moment. Next slide. Okay. Regarding our previous meetings, all the materials and minutes from the previous meetings are available in the meeting section of the GitLab repository, so everybody can review the discussions and the updates there. And if anyone has any comment or follow-up from the previous meeting, this would also be a good moment to mention them. As far as the schedule and the deliverables are concerned, okay. The project schedule and deliverables are also available in the About section of the repository. So for today, I suggest we keep this part short and focus mainly on some conceptual issues currently that have been raised under the issue in the GitLab repository. So, but if anybody has any update regarding the deliverables or the timeline, please feel free to share them with us. So as far as the main topic of today's meeting is concerned, moving on to the main point of today's discussion, I understand that until now, much of our work has been focused on the technical architecture of the GTR project and the digital identity anchor. However, before we move further into the technical side of the project, even though it's really related to it, it might be useful to clarify some core legal concepts that are central to the architecture that we are building. This has also been raised as an issue. Probably you have seen it. In particular, I'm talking about three concepts: authoritative registrar, and as well digital identity anchor. Today, I thought we could focus mainly on the first two. But maybe if we have time, we could also focus on the third one, which is the digital identity anchor concept, and perhaps continue the discussion regarding the digital identity anchor or all of them in the next meetings if the time is not enough today. But of course, I would also be interested to hear whether you agree with this approach or maybe there are any other priorities that we should address today. No comment. Okay. So why I think it's important to clarify these concepts. The main reason for clarifying these concepts, especially the idea of an authoritative public register, is simply to better understand what kind of entities should be included in the Global Trust Directory and the grid. In other words, we would like to clarify which entities should be eligible to be listed in the grid to avoid situations where all sorts of entities outside the scope of our project might enter or might want to enter the system. Once we identify which entities can participate, it may also be useful to define some basic characteristics of these registers as we have done so far. But at the same time, we should always keep in our mind that we are working within different national jurisdictions. and nothing in this project should obviously interfere with the national legal frame. So authoritative registers will ultimately be those recognized under the laws of each jurisdiction. This for us, for me and for John, I think it's pretty clear. However, it might still be helpful to identify some minimum characteristics, for example, that the registers acts as an authentic source of information, which helps to distinguish it from entities that simply store or stock data without any legal authority. I would be very interested to hear your viewpoint and whether you think this approach makes sense for defining which entities should participate in the grid.
I think that's a really important point, Alina. It's, I think, issue number 45. If you want to click on the, if you want to show
yes,
you're talking to, if you click that,
yes,
it'll then come up. I put a thought in the response to the raising the issue, which I offer as a discussion. Really, I think we can decouple the definition of an authoritative registrar or registrar from the eligibility requirements that they must meet. In other words, if we were to use the term, I'm making the term up, grid registrar, just call it a grid registrar, and then have a separate set of eligibility requirements to say what is required for somebody to become a grid registrar, we prevent the risk you rightly describe of the wrong kind of registrars being thought that they could be included and so on, because they need to meet the eligibility. If we make the definition of registrar for grid verbose and long and have lots of clauses in it, it becomes difficult to move from there without changing the definition of a registrar. So what I'm suggesting is we might want to have a good, solid, as you just said, a legal basis and a few other key terms in the term definition for registrar, for grid registrar, and then have, as you've already defined, some eligibility requirements that very tightly and carefully define those that are eligible in the current release of the grid.
Yes, I think you're right. Recently, I received some proposals and suggestions from my colleagues, and the definitions that I proposed are not copyrighted by me. So I want to respect everybody's opinions and that everybody feels that has been taken into account. That's why I proposed recently two definitions regarding authoritative register and register, which are actually the ideas and thoughts of my colleagues, some of them university teachers. So you can see one of them, the first one, authoritative register, this definition that they proposed. And the other one, let me just check. This one you can also see it here as well. So it reflects the thoughts and ideas of some of my colleagues. Nevertheless, everybody is welcome to comment and to edit on this. I think we can use this concept or definition to work on it together, and in order to achieve a precise one. I think it's very important. It's a core element of our project. This also connects it with a broader point about trust. I don't know if you remember that during the global digital collaboration conference, when we presented the GDPR project, actually during a break I was discussing it with Steve, and he said something like, trust is trust, not because we digitalize the system, but because there is a public authority that says so, that certifies, and that grants this trust. And if you want, we can analyze briefly these definitions, or if anybody has any comments regarding.
Well, I think these are both very important. I absolutely agree with your approach of putting these as issues, Alina. If you go back to the first one about registrar, which is number 45.
Okay,
I'll explain briefly. So again, I'm not I'm not.
Yes.
I'm putting another viewpoint. I'm not saying it's the right viewpoint, but a different viewpoint.
Yes, of course. Yes.
What I'm suggesting is, whenever we have these terms, we make them as short as we can, with as few words as we can, to be as sort of precise as we can make them. And the reason
Yes.
I am saying that is that if you look at the list of
Yes.
roles, so the roles include establishment, governance, supervision, or operation. And that the way that list of 4 terms is described means,
Yes.
theoretically, anybody that does any one of those things could be considered to be an authoritative registrar. But in general, for most registrars, the body that is the establishing body is not the registrar that is then operating the register. The body is established by law. It's established by a government, by politicians. And then, so I think we risk, when we have that long string of establishment, governance, supervision, or operation, those are potentially 4 different organizations. And what we really want to say is that is someone entrusted with the operation of a register.
Okay.
So it's an idea. And again, I'm not saying it's the best or better idea, but a way of thinking is to say, how short could we make the sentence?
Yes, of course. So I can see that you suggested a body legally empowered to manage, supervise, and maintain an official register for a specific jurisdiction.
Yeah. So that may that with your analysis, because you're the lawyer,
Yes.
you may think that's lacking in something, and that could be true. So you don't need to on the call say that's right or wrong. But my aim
Yes,
is to
of course.
say how few words could be used. Can we make it as simple as possible, but no simpler? Is the kind of
This might help. I can see that we have on the call my colleague Carmen. Maybe she wants to add something regarding this issue, or...
Hello, good morning. I think it's very interesting to have a short definition, but we can lose both aspects, security and legal certainty, because I think it's the aim of the land registry and of the commercial registry. We must provide a legal information that is supported by the government, by the state, and we can lose these 2 words, I think, security and legal certainty.
Carmen, just a brief mention. This definition applies, I would say, as an example from our jurisdiction to CORDME, like Colegio de Registradores. And then we have another one for registro, which would be, wait a second, this one. So we have 2 different concepts, pretty similar.
Okay.
So maybe you were referring to this one, which is the second one, as
the second one, yes.
The main definition we have in the glossary is a UN member state register established by law or formal regulation, managed or supervised by a public authority with the power to create, maintain, and certify official trade-relevant identifiers within a jurisdiction. It's the one here on top. And then I suggested here, I have some ideas from our colleague Nicolas Nogueroles, from you, and from our colleague Teresa Turignan, the one you can see below. This is the definition.
Anyway, I think it's important to say what we have to say. I mean, a public registry must have some things, important things to underline, which are security and of course it's a public register established by law, formal regulation within a jurisdiction. All these things must be there. But I think we must use some words. It's important to use them.
I don't know, what is your opinion, John?
So you're right, and Carmen's right as well. That it's important we get this right. The separation of registrar and register was quite deliberate. Is still quite deliberate. So when we're using the word registrar, we're referring to the body, the organization that is responsible for the register, and the register is then just the list, not just, but it is a list of the facts that have been recorded by the registrar in their register. So what we want, if we accept that separation, I think it's useful to have the separation, then we need to be careful in our definition of register that we don't include the registrar qualities as well. Okay, so if we have a separation of register and registrar, then we must maintain that in our definitions. And I can see in this definition, we've got a bit of registrar, the body definition, as well as register.
And that would be like...
Well, I think it's difficult to separate. I know what you mean, but to make a definition of register without the registry, it's, I don't know. It's very difficult.
Well, okay, I can only speak for the countries I know. I know that for Australia, the UK, and Canada, it's normal. Because you're defining a role to be performed by a body, and that body might change. You might change the name of the body. It might become a not-for-profit organization that's separated from government. It might be a department of the government. The body that's responsible for the register may change. The register may have a requirement to have longevity. So land, for example, is a very good register of long-lived sort of records. So are things like births, deaths, and marriages. So are other things that have longevity. But the body responsible for those things might change over time. So that's why this sort of idea of separation is there. Not the law I've seen, I can only talk to the kind of those three countries, has that separation in its legislature. It doesn't blend the two together.
But these bodies are chosen by law. They must have a legal support. I mean, they record all this information, but they have this power, I could say, because law gives them, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. That's actually, you're absolutely right, Colin. That's a fundamental expectation or requirement, that these records have legal standing in the jurisdiction. They have a meaning given to them by law in the jurisdiction. You're absolutely right. So that sense must be in the definition.
I think that this is like this in all jurisdiction. There has to be a law which says this is the body that will manage this
this thing,
whatever might be.
I haven't tried on this definition, but my aim would be the same as on the registrar definition. Is there a way to use fewer words but not lose any of the meaning you've already got? In other words, maintain the integrity of the definition you've created, but if we could use fewer words and less sort of complexity, if you like, about ors and other things inside the definition.
Yes, of course, might be that we make it shorter. Nevertheless, I wanted to create this definition and make sure that all my colleagues' ideas are there, and then we can work on it and maybe somehow make it more precise or shorter.
That's all I mean. I mean, I accept fully, particularly in the presence of lawyers, that it might be necessary to add words rather than remove words. But my kind of overarching approach is, can we make it shorter? Because shorter tends to be less open to misunderstanding, if it can be done so. So that's yes, what my aim would be. Sankashan, do you want to offer? I can see you, so I feel like asking you a question. What do you think?
My approach to definitions has always been that we write out in exhaustive detail exactly what we are thinking, and then try and sort of sequentially pare it down to a point where we say this is sufficient, meets all legal requirements. And additionally, probably if somebody in the UN scheme of things wants to translate it, they know the meaning well enough and cleanly enough to translate it into any of the languages that it needs to be translated into. So that's where I would probably approach it from.
I like that. So I think we accept as a baseline, Alina and Carmen, what you've produced here, and we see if we can make it any shorter without losing any of the meaning. And if we can't, we stay with what it is.
What I do like, I think, from this definition, if I have a look at it again, is that the register serves an official source of information. Actually, like an authentic source of information. This idea I pretty much like.
I
Because
like
it
to.
requires that it's not just that database that stores information or data
Exactly.
just like that.
That is a very important point. The words I was, in a sense, tripping up on a bit are the ones that say "and mandated to assign, maintain, and certify records or identifiers." That's the role of the body looking after the register. That's not the register.
And a few colleagues were discussing as well whether we should specify or not trade identifiers or just leave it as
I'd be happy not
identifier.
to.
I don't know.
I'd be happy not to have them there and to have it somewhere else, because we're going to define the eligibility requirements for the registrars for the grid, and those could include terms that describe trade-related data. I'd be happy if we want to remove that term. That was in. I know you inherited that, but I'd be happy if it's gone.
Yeah, then we agree on this. Yes, I would like people to participate and suggest. Otherwise, they will think that it's this draft copyright by me and John only, and we don't want that.
No, no. We should just pick somebody whose name is on the call and say, right, you're now going to come up with a short version or another version, maybe longer.
And if not, then we can continue with the digital identity anchor definition from the glossary, or
yeah. Let's show the next one if that's okay.
Oh, one more thing, because we have another issue. I have just seen now implementation guidelines. Okay.
This
is another issue. Yes, that we need to create.
Yeah.
Yes, we would need to create and complete an implementation guidelines document that explains how the grid can be established, what types of registration do we start with, and how the registers can implement a digital identity anchor, considering both the grid participants and non-grid. Manuka, honey, here we come. That's
sorry about that.
Yes. I would like to mention that I'm currently working on another section that would most likely fit in here. We decided to name it at the beginning something like transition to an operational model or system, but it could also be under the implementation guidelines. I think this section is really related to the pilot projects section.
Yeah. It gets informed by the pilot projects, yes.
Yes. And the main idea would be, how do we go to the idea to have an operational model and to actually implement the digital identity anchor system in and the grid. So I think we have to separate on one hand how the grid would function, and on the other, how should we implement the digital identity anchor. And regarding this second thing, the digital identity anchor, we were in the very beginning of this project. I remember an online meeting with Steve and some of my colleagues from the IT department, where they were saying, yes, but we have national identifiers, especially in the business registers. One of them is IRUS, or IRUS as we call it. And how would this digital identity anchor would fit in this existing infrastructure that we already have? And I think Steve was suggesting that what we can do is actually build on our existing infrastructure, like adding a layer or wrap the identifiers that we already have to build on them, and just linking these identifiers to cryptographic signatures to make them verifiable and global at the same time. I don't know, John, how do you see this, and how we should focus on creating this new section?
So yes, I say yes. Yes, you're right. The existing identifiers issued by registrars, so identifiers for land ownership, identifiers for companies, identifiers for marine assets, all those sorts of identifiers, they don't get changed by the use of the digital identity anchor. The structure, if you use an EU ID, if you issue an LEI, none of this changes. All that happens is they get wrapped effectively in a cryptographic wrapping, a signed envelope that has that identifier in it, and one other piece of information from the subject, from the owner of the land or the company, which is the thing called a DID, decentralized identifier. Again, that's not a new, I know it has the word identifier in it, but it's not a new identifier. It's a pointer, if you like, an address where you can find stuff out about that company. And that's an important thing. Now we've got two issues that are talking about this this topic. One is the implementation guidelines. How might a registrar use the DIA? That's about guidance about the best way to use it. There is an issue where we're discussing the best structure for a DIA, which is advice we'll give back to UNTP. So there's a project, United Nations Transparency Protocol, that owns the credential definitions, including digital identity anchor, and we'll give them suggestions, if we have any, about how they might modify the DIA to the benefit of all. So that's an issue that's in the list of issues, Alina, as well as this implementation guideline.
Okay.
It might be worth showing people that issue so they can see what it's a long discussion that's been had already. It's issue number, what issue number is it? Issue number 3. Issue number 3, right at the bottom of the list you're looking at right now. Proposed changes to the UNTP DIA spec. So this project, GTR project, had a requirement in the project brief to consider the DIA spec and to see whether there was a way to improve it. So this discussion is really a whole discussion around if or how it might be improved. I think a couple of things where I sense this discussion is centering now. The DIA should be as simple as possible. It should only have one registrar provided identifier inside it and a DID from the subject, and that's it. So the registrar's identifier, be that an LEI, a Spanish business identifier, or other forms of identifier, that's the registrar's right, responsibility to create and decide what the number is or the structure is, and then it's wrapped up in one digital identity anchor. If you release 3, go.
Okay, but who, I think we said that who is issuing the digital identity anchor is the registrar or registrar.
No, well, the registrar. So the body that issues
Registrar.
things is the registrar, right?
Okay,
The registrar issues
so
things.
then I got a little bit confused with these two. This is where I wanted to. Okay, I got a little bit confused with the definitions then, like the difference between these two concepts. I think it's a bit confusing.
So think of register as a list. A register is a list. That's all it is. A registrar is the organization that looks after it.
Yeah, the thing is, in most countries is decentralized. Like Hans was saying once, like there are many offices in a national territory. Usually, the organization is decentralized. So
Yeah, that's a problem, but it's a different problem. It's not. That's not a problem of registrar or register. That's a problem about who is the authority.
who is issuing that? The problem is exactly.
So the German example you were given, I think, was poorly phrased for you at that conference, because there is an answer to that question, which is yes, Germany has 198 or so registrars that are basically the local courts and councils across Germany. But the actual, if you ask the question of a company, are you a German company? They give you an answer that comes from a centralized resource in Germany that lists all these companies. So it's not like you have to have 198 registrars in the grid. So I think it was a bit of a difficult question that shouldn't have been asked the way it was. But nevertheless, were Germany to have 198 registrars, then we'd have them. But I want to get the DIA, digital identity anchor, has to be issued by an authority. So that's why we're using the word registrar. But the discussion about the numbers of authorities, that's a different conversation. So this issue is only looking at the specification of the data, the structure of a digital identity anchor. And the answer that we've come to is it should be as simple as possible. One identifier, one DID, And then if you, as a registrar, issue many identifiers for the same organization, so maybe 3, a Spanish business identifier, an EU ID, and an LEI, you issue 3 DIAs. And that's to keep it as simple as possible and not confuse things or cross over on sort of areas. Other than that, the only other thing this has suggested we give back to the UNTP is a recognition that the registrar, the authority that's recognizing a land ownership or recognizing a company, is in absolute control of that decision and absolute control over the identifier that they create. So they are, in a sense, the authority and responsible for this data. But if a company has given them another piece of data, like a thing called a DID, the company is under the control of that DID. And therefore, the registrar might recognize, register that they have offered this DID, but they're not liable for it or controlling it. So we thought there might be a need to have 2 types of data separation. So verified and asserted are this idea around what's been provided to the registrar by the subject that they've registered. And the other element, the actual result of the registration process, is absolutely the control and responsibility and authority of the registrar. So that's why we have this sort of types of data trust attribution model, as we've called it here. So those are the 2 ideas we got. Keep it very simple, single atomic identifiers, and make sure that it's clear what data is owned by the registrar and what data effectively is being provided to the registrar.
Okay, I think this is pretty much related to the discussion we had with Hans a couple of weeks ago regarding the digital identity anchor. Wait a second, because I'm searching. Like legal and technical aspects, I think, are pretty much related, but we have to work on both. So now coming back to the issues that we raised.
So if you scroll down this issue, you'll see Hans and Harman and others have been part of the discussion. So that first statement you're looking at is the beginning of quite a long dialogue that carries on through that whole issue and gets to a conclusion, I think, at the end.
Maybe it would be interesting that they participate as well in this discussion. So maybe during the next meeting we can focus on this. Now I would like to solve this. Actually, we cannot solve it during the meeting, but try to solve these issues regarding the concepts and the definitions. I don't know if any of my colleagues would like to add something. I think Jesus would also have to introduce himself.
Yeah. Hi. Hello, colleagues, friends, partners. It's always nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to be now with you in this meeting. But in a way, actually, may I have to say, I love Aristotle. I remember in the Aristotle school, all the pupils have to be in silent during 3 years. Then at first, at the beginning, I prefer to be listening to you. Wait, in the future or later, I'm going to be adding more ideas if you wish. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. He will participate and give us a hand with these concepts. So just as a conclusion, I don't know if everybody's happy or not with this concept and the distinction between authoritative registrar and register. Carmen?
Well, when I came into this meeting, I thought we were talking only about registries, about register, not about the body. So there was a small confusion. Anyway, I think it's really difficult. It's a goal to have a concept for all the world in both terms. I think I'm happy with both definitions. Maybe they should be shorter. I know English spoken people like to do it everything simple and short. Latin languages speakers, we try to speak and make it longer. It's very important to have a definition, a concept that could be able to explain in a few words what are both things. And for the identity anchors, it's the same. I think the main thing is who's the authority that is giving this identity anchor, which should be simple as well, to identify companies, to identify plots, to identify whatever that is moving in markets.
Absolutely. That you actually use a third word there, Carmen, which I very much agree with. But so we've got three horribly similar English-sounding words: registrar, the body that looks after a register; register, the list of things that the registrar maintains; and then the phrase we often use, registries.
Yeah.
And registries is this compound structure that says when we're looking at the registries of Australia, they include land and birth, deaths, and marriages and companies and other things. And we typically have combined the concept of a list of things and the body looking after the list of things in the term registries. But it sounds odd because I know we've been talking about, and that makes it sound like it isn't clear. But for clarity, we're trying to separate the two terms to make it easier to sort of define the meaning and the exactness of what we're talking about. To a quick response on DIs, the only, in our world, the grid GTR UNTP world, the only issuer of a DIA is going to be a registrar. It's going to be an authoritative registrar. It's not going to be anybody else. And that's for grid recognition, if you like it. Those are the DIAs that are issued by authoritative registrars from countries like registradores.
Yes, now I understand these different terms. I understand what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we have the glossary. Just to mention, if my colleague Jesus, for example, maybe would need to know, and Carmen as well, how we organize the documents, the deliverables in the UN open source website. So we have the About project, and then here we have the project documents and deliverables. So you can have a look at it and go through all the documents. We have different sections that should match the deliverables. About this topic I was discussing with John. We have a glossary, which is actually mandatory, that applies to all the deliverables and all the documents. And the definitions are placed here inside this glossary. So you can check them. And we will be happy if you would give us the feedback or any comments regarding these definitions, because documents are still to be edited. So we have the concepts here, authoritative, as you can see, register and registrar here, as well as the digital identity anchor concept, which is this one, verifiable credential issued by an authoritative register. So some of my colleagues was asking, and especially the director of the European Affairs Department, that if it's a new identifier, because she saw verifiable credential issued by an authoritative register, and she thought that this might be the same as a new identifier. I think maybe we will have to discuss this concept as well during the next meeting. Maybe when Arman and Hans are online as well. And I also like the members of our IT department also to join.
Cool.
Yes.
We should yes raise it again for the next 2 weeks. For the audience on this call now, a verifiable credential is a term. It's also defined in our glossary, and it refers to the W3C verifiable credential data model, the W3C VCDM. A verifiable credential is a tamper-evident cryptographic block of data that tells you who signed the thing, has the thing been changed since it was signed, and that's the sort of basic qualities of the VC, the verifiable credential. It is not a new identifier. It's a wrapper around something, around data, and the wrapper is not an identifier. The wrapper is just a packet of data with the signature on it. The thing contained is the identifier issued by the registrar, by the registradores or whoever else has been the issuer of the thing.
Yes, and we were discussing if it should wrap one or more identifiers, John, if you remember.
That was what I was saying a little earlier in the call.
Yes.
The discussion on this technical specification of DIA, we are, I think, agreeing, the group of people that have been talking about this, that we should only have one identifier in the DIA. That's it's like a should. I don't think we need to say must, but I think we'll say should, because it makes it simpler. And I'll give one example why it's simpler. If I think registradores can actually, as an organization, issue 3 types of company identifier: the Spanish business identifier, an EU ID in the future, or an enterprise
European,
identifier,
yes, European.
and then an
identifier.
LEI, a legal
Yes.
entity identifier. The 3 types. Each of
Yes.
those has a subtly different power or meaning in its legal sort of framework, right? They are, an LEI is a thing understood by GLIFE. It has a certain thing from GLIFE, and the EUID has a thing under the framework of ARF, under the European EIDAS, and so on. So these are similar but different, and that's why we think maybe having them in separate digital identity anchors is a good idea, because then there's no kind of confusion about the meaning of the thing inside the DIA.
So then you would suggest a digital identity anchor for each of these identifiers, not one that wraps all of them.
Yes, that's the way we're thinking at the moment. We think that won't be an imposition, a challenge for the registrar. It might actually be simpler given the current processes that tend to happen in organizations. But we're very happy to kind of work that through. But that's where we're thinking from a sort of technical point of view. We think it's better if it's what we're calling atomic, one identifier inside the DIA.
I also received another question, like how would this work with the European wallets?
It's compatible with the European wallet. It doesn't have any conflicts with the European wallet. So the European wallet has the 2 flavors, the business wallet and a personal wallet. So we'll put the personal wallet to the side because we're not really dealing with that in the UN CEFACT work. The business wallet is effectively the enterprise store for the credentials that a business is owner of and provider of and a recipient of and so on. And that's consistent with the idea of UNTP, where an organization issues things and allows others to traverse them. There's a section about transparency graphs, about what's called a pull process. So you found a product, you want to know where the product's come, what it was made of, what other countries were involved in its production, what other companies were involved in. That's called traversing the graph, and that requires the business wallets are accessible by the person traversing. So there's no conflict, there's different terms, but the ideas are compatible with each other between UNTP's approach and business wallets for the EU.
Okay, John, thank you very much. So I see we're kind of running out of time, and just to be pragmatic and to see what will the homework be for the next meeting, then, and just to move forward, I think I will raise another issue, which is regarding this digital identity anchor concept and definition. Maybe anybody would like to add or suggest or add anything. So then everybody has the chance to do it. On one hand, on the other, I will work on this other section that we already have it raised as an issue, this transition to the operational model system under the implementation guidelines section, the deliverable. And what else? Because there are so many things.
Those are good. I'd suggest some deadlines if we as a group are okay, or proposed deadlines, that in 2 weeks' time we have comments on those definitions that are in those issues from people. So we've got an opportunity in 2 weeks' time to agree the definition that's used. and also that in 2 weeks' time we at least have some content for these implementation guidelines that give some people ideas about.
Yes, so yes, I personally commit that we will have this content for the implementation guidelines deliverable, and I would like everybody to commit that during the next couple of weeks, at least we will have to work on these 3 concepts. Now I will, after this meeting, raise another issue, as I mentioned, regarding digital identity anchor, and then we have the other issue, unsolved issues. So I would be happy if everybody will work on this and try to solve these issues before moving forward. And I don't know if there are any other comments. Happy to hear.
One very last quick thing from me. There's an issue in the list that we haven't talked about. We don't necessarily need to talk about it. It's I raised it because Mark Lazar, who's working on ISO standards to do with consent, had a presentation 2 weeks ago talking about this ISO standard on consent records. And I'm proposing in the issue log that it's not directly applicable to our work, but you'll see there's an issue that discusses what that standard is about and why I don't think it's necessarily directly applicable to us. But again, as with the other issues, everybody is very welcome and encouraged to voice or write comments in about what they think.
Okay, John, I imagine you refer to this one that we can see on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. We will make sure that everybody has access to the documents, and in case that you don't, please feel free to email or WhatsApp us or whatever you like, because it would be good to check. You can find this. I don't know if everybody has access to this link.
Everybody has access to the GitLab repository, and even guests can put discussion comments into the issues. Only people that become part of the project can actually change content, but everybody can write in.
Just in case, I will share it on the chat, so everybody has this link.
Cool.
You can copy paste, and I think you don't need an account to see these documents, if I'm not mistaken.
You can read them without even a GitLab account.
Though it would be good or advisable to have an account, but
we'd love you to have accounts. Go, please register. Yeah.
Yes, I actually my colleague Jesus has registered yesterday, and
Cool.
if Carmen would like as well.
Yes, I would like. I don't know if I have actually access to these documents, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, then I will send you the link so you can register, because otherwise you can just see the documents but not make any comments, if I'm not mistaken, John.
Okay.
Yes, everybody without an account, without any login, can see all of the content. So you can read all the content, obviously in the website, that's all accessible, but also in the GitLab. If you have a GitLab account, you can certainly write comments in the issues. And if you're a member of the project, which is a process you go through about registering with UNICC, we can then give you abilities to produce new documentation definitions and other things, so you can be much more active in the project.
Okay, then I will send you the link so you can sign up and have an account. Though I think you would need to wait for the approval. This takes around a couple of days, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, so I'm just
Something like that.
I'm inviting Jesus into the team. So you're now a member, Jesus. You'll have ability to do some things. You're a developer now for the team. But yes, you're right, Marlena. You register with the New York-based UN group called UNICC. They then process the registration, and once you're through that registration process, we can let you into the project team.
Okay, so this is the link. I think she can register here, or there is another one, another link. If not, I will WhatsApp you with the link. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody. If anybody has any other comment, feel free. And if not, see you in a couple of weeks, hopefully with the homework done.
Yes.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, Alina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.